I guess just talk about Marquette and what, you're hoping for.
Yeah, they, play 10, 11 players. At times they substitute almost hockey style, 5 players in, 5 players out. A very aggressive, athletic team. Gardner is the kind of the nerve center of the team. Everything goes through him, and he's almost a point center, like a point guard, but at the center position. And he's one of the more intriguing talents in the Big East in terms of unconventional in certain ways by today's standards, but he's really a throwback pivot or low post player from another era, and so should be a highly competitive game.
You'd said for a while that kind of you always looked at February as when you thought these guys could kind of start getting to where you thought they could be.
Yeah.
Do you have that sense now that we're here?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely playing better basketball. We have 3 out of 4 wins as an indication of that, and then taking Creighton to the wire. The first place team in our conference in a tough environment, and had an opportunity to win the game in the final seconds. So, we definitely made progress, and we just have to keep building. I think the season is obviously fluid and dynamic, and so you just got to keep trying to elevate and improve all aspects of play. And this week's no different than any other week. That's the goal. Let's get better.
Steve, Jakar was saying that he thinks that when the team presses, they are operating more on instinct and thinking less, and that maybe that's good for them.
Oh, we love it, yeah. And the last 5 games we've been pressing, and I think it's paid dividends. The only challenge we have is when we don't score the free throws or the field goals, we can't get into it. But we've been pressing for 40 minutes the last 5, 6 games now. But it looks most effective when we score, like against Butler, against Providence, against Seton Hall, and against Creighton. Because once we score, we get into it, and then we go on those flurries or runs. But then when we have the stretches where we don't score, then we can't get into the press.
Do you think, as Jakar may have suggested, that using it at the start of the game might be the...
Yeah, and we've been from start to finish the last 5 games in the press. The challenge is when we don't score, we can't get in. So we're in it from start to finish. I think, sometimes he may feel we're not in the press because we haven't scored and we're down 16, and then we start scoring and then we come back in the press. So, but we're in it. We're in our, what we call our one full for the last 5 games now, 5 or 6 games, 40 minutes of full court pressure. But you can't pressure if you miss, because then they're going down the other end. If you're pressing, they're going to be racing by you for 3-on-2, 2-on-1 breaks. But once we score, we've been in it for 5, 6 games now, maybe even more, maybe 7 or 8 games. We've been pressing for 40 minutes a game on our made baskets and free throws. But I think to a player, they're thinking we're not pressing. Well, it's because we're not scoring. You have to score to get into the press.
I guess under the same kind of idea, because obviously you can't press every single possession, but...
On every score you can.
Yeah. Well, so
that's what we're in. No one presses on a miss.
No, of course. So offensively, though, I mean, and it's been in connection with when you've had turnovers, that when the guys are in transition, the offense seems to be at its best. Great ball movement, chemistry. Is there an idea that you want to kind of get these guys playing faster and
absolutely
more out of the half court?
Always pedal the metal, baseline to baseline attacking style of basketball, but that's predicated also on defense. So if we're not getting stops, then we can't fast break. So now you have, in a nutshell, when we're playing at our best, it's because we score and they can get into the press. And when we're not playing well, it's when we can't get stops because we can't fast break. And so when we're rolling, we're doing both. We're getting stops, which fuels our fast break, which leads to scores, which leads to us pressing, and that's how we come from 16 down, 18 down, 14 down, 15 down. Now in that stretch, the opposing team is in a drought, and they're not scoring, and then they're not able to set their defense, and that's why we come back. And that's the game. It's a game of runs, and anytime we go on an 18-0 run or 16-2 run or 14-4 run, the other team isn't getting accomplished what they want to, and we are. And so hence is the game of basketball.
Toward the end of that second half, I felt like this was the St. John's game I took over before also.
Yeah.
I'm curious, different toward the end of that game? And what, is there something that you guys take from that game you can apply to the second half?
I think similar to the other games, you know, we've had this run now, really since Georgetown is I'd say from halftime of the Georgetown game forward, we've really played a good stretch of basketball. Not with the desired outcomes in every game, 'cause we would, you know, wish we'd won every game or won more of those games since the Georgetown game. But if you really look at the scores, you know, Villanova to the wire, overtime against Providence, you know, a nail biter at DePaul, 3 consecutive wins somewhere in there as well. The Providence double overtime game, a victory at Butler, another nail biter down to the wire, high level game at Creighton. So I really feel like since the Georgetown halftime, this team has strung together a good stretch of basketball, but it's such a competitive league, just like the scores we look at last night, you know, or a couple nights ago with Butler going into Seton Hall and waxing them. I mean, just, you know, mysteries in terms of scores. And last night, you know, Providence gets handled you know, easily by Marquette. So I think even when you're playing really good basketball, you know, at this level, it doesn't guarantee that you're always going to get the wins, but it gives you a chance to be competitive, as we have been in every game since halftime of that Georgetown game, and that's the goals. You know, if you're competitive in every game, you're going to get your share of the wins, and that's how we've won 3 of 4, and we're very close to having a 6-game winning streak. I mean, it's this, you know, the double overtime game, Providence, if you even go back to DePaul, and then Creighton, like that'd be a 6 or 7-game winning streak, and we'd be in a dramatically different situation if we had a 7-game winning streak going for us right now. And it's not as though any of those, you know, we weren't beat by double figures, no one blitzed us off the court, but we were right there in every game since Georgetown, you know. So I think less the last 10 minutes of Creighton, but more since the halftime of Georgetown, this team has been on a steady, you know, kind of path of growth, even though we haven't always gotten the desired outcome of the win. You know, it's clear it's a team that's improving.
With that as your line of demarcation, what's really been different there? Like, different between first half Georgetown and since then?
I'd say just, you know, probably a sustained, I mean, a couple things. One is Rishi George just keeps improving. If you look at his numbers, I mean, as impressive as any freshman in our league when you look at the Big East conference games. So I think his steady progress, and then also kids just playing really hard. You know, it's a group that's competing, as I've said, competing their fannies off, and then a freshman that continues to improve. And as a result, we've been in every game since that Georgetown halftime.
Steve, as long as Jordan's on the topic here, I mean, has he taken some very large strides in the last week or 10 days?
Yes.
And what does that look like to you?
Let's see. Yeah, he just, what we knew when we recruited him, that he's very, he's a basketball player that has tremendous instincts, competitive drive, and a gift to play the game with the ball in his hands. And then defensively, his prowess as a ball hawker comes into play because he's so disruptive to opponents in terms of what they're trying to do at the offensive end of the court. So, yeah, just think kind of just a steady, kind of a steady improvement in his play. So, it's, I think, it's tough because he's been well chronicled, the health issues with his grandfather and his mother. She had another setback and was hospitalized the last 2 days in Philadelphia again. So that's the other part, is we know, because the challenges he's had on the health front with his grandfather and his mom, it's made it more difficult, and he's had a more, a bit of a disjointed freshman campaign as a result. But it's impressive that he is still making strides in spite of the health challenges.
What would you like to see more from the half-court offense? I mean, there's been a lot of isolation, sometimes stagnant, obviously, you work in some pick and rolls and things like that,
Sure.
but it just seems like guys are kind of.
Sorry. Yeah, so, let's see. I
Do you
think,
not agree with that?
let me see, let me just, I can come up with something here for you. Probably, I thought probably the last 5-6 games, you're seeing kind of a steady growth or improvement. Butler, I think was an example of, I forget what the numbers are, Mark would have those, but they're really impressive numbers if you look at the Butler game, and even Creighton game in the second half. So I think just kind of, what we saw in Butler, what we've seen in the last 5-6 games, we're just continuing to improve in those areas.
Steve, in terms of this idea, we've seen a little bit more of you using Branch and Jordan together. Do you like that combination?
Yeah, there'll be
Does
time.
it do something good for you guys?
I mean, they'll it didn't against Creighton. It did against Butler, but I think, there'll be times where they're in there together, but there'll be other times too where, Jamal will be the lead guard, and there'll be other times where Rashid's the lead guard.
Should Jamal play a bigger role?
In what way?
I mean, he didn't play more than 20 minutes until the Dartmouth game, and now he's been playing more than 20 minutes regularly. I mean, is this?
Yeah, I would
has
read.
he
I would
found-
read.
Has he found a place where he's?
I don't think. I think he's going to continue. He'll be a valuable contributor. But we're still. It's not like I would say. In other words, he's doing a great job.
I'm not suggesting.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting him as a replacement for Rashid. I'm just wondering if you like the idea of having two distributors at once.
Sometimes, yeah. Yes, sometimes. But I wouldn't. In other words, there'll be times where they're in there together, and times where they aren't. Pretty much what you've seen so far. You probably continue to see that. Because so much of it too is early with Rashid in terms of the challenge he's had at the home front, and the disjointed aspect we're talking about. Some of that's played into minutes and distribution and whatnot. So distribution of minutes. So, but we need them both, and they'll play together sometimes, and there'll be times where they're not in there together.